Bitcoin looking very much set to open up this week with a nice little bounceola here. However, very little has changed in the higher term time frame look, but I do want to be reminding myself as well as community here as to the major points of interest for Bitcoin, both the upside and the downside, and what actually does change the overall picture. And I think that this daily time frame here for CME gets things really well with the price action pivots indicator, suggesting that the top side area of interest for effectively declaring a breakout is coming in at this most recent price action pivot, which was just below 111 actually. Again, keep in mind that CME does have a premium over spot price action by about 500 to 600 bucks right now. And then of course, to the downside, we are very likely going to witness the evolution of the downside price action pivot moving from Thursday of last week's low to very likely, that's 2 weeks ago. In fact, the 5th of Thursday is what I mean at 100,800 or 100,700. And that's very likely going to move up to the bottom end of Friday's low, which is 103 effectively. So Bitcoin effectively wedging itself within this region, very likely to continue on with this nice little bounceola to start off this week. But like I said, very little changes as long as Bitcoin's oscillating between these two major numbers. And as the price action pivots indicator is indicating, that's what indicators do, right? We can see that this is effectively becoming a tightening range here. If you're a pattern bro, then you'd be looking at this as a symmetrical triangle, and it does have an apex coming in around the 9th of July, and these things are liable to break or very likely to break, especially when they get about 75% full, and that would put us into about the 25th or 26th of June, just kind of doing a bit of an eyeball test here. So, what am I essentially saying? I'm saying that Bitcoin probably isn't going to do anything like super interesting in the next week or maybe even 10 days, but very close to the end of this month, we probably do see a breakout or breakdown forced, and we'll go over targets that accompany that soon enough. But it's basically a tightening range. Maybe we see a move up to start off this week somewhere around 109, maybe even 110. Maybe it comes down back to 103.5 to 104. That's fine. Again, nothing changes in this range as long as neither of these price action pivots are taken out. Now, if they are taken out, meaning that Bitcoin is actually closed above or below them on a daily time frame, then using the current trajectory, what effectively would be the upside target if Bitcoin were to break to the upside? And again, it completely depends upon when Bitcoin would actually approach this, but that would be pointed up on an implied target all the way up towards, almost 120. It's really just below 119, but it would be very hard for me to see Bitcoin not making a leg up to 120 if that did happen, of course. And to the downside, still an area of interest here is going to be about 95,000 bucks. I do think that the downside has a little bit more merit in the short term, in the more medium term, just because of some things that we'll speak about a little bit later. But at the end of the day, whichever way it breaks, that's the way that I'm going to be looking at it. And that's all that really matters, despite my opinion on it. Of course, we should also be just aware that, the weekly time frame here has had the same pivot to the upside coming in from the January highs for the last, 6 months? About 6 months now. And Bitcoin has effectively pushed up into this region once, twice, thrice, and all of them have been rejections. So, when I see something like that, it does make me concerned that at some point you kind of wear out your welcome at a region like this, and you naturally go the other way for some time. But again, that's not like a bearish call or anything like this. Ultimately this is very likely to end up being an opportunity if Bitcoin pulls back at all. I'm not even saying that it is going to definitely at this point, but there are some compelling things in the backgrounds, at least for right now. So moving on from there, I also wanted to go over the stablecoin dominance here because this one also does support short-term upside. We can see on the daily time frame, this one is putting in and confirming another local and lower high, and very likely the next move is probably going to bring it back down to, somewhere in this region right here. I would expect it doesn't necessarily have to be a higher low or a lower low. If it comes down even around here, obviously that's going to put a nice booster fuel for Bitcoins to the upside, as this one does play inversely of cryptos or mostly Bitcoin and these strong alts, which there's really a massive now, so maybe more than what I've seen in a long time. There's a major bifurcation between strong alts and shitty alts, because strong alts, they've been making new all-time highs this past week. It's fucking insane, man. But the weaker alts, these things are just continuing to confirm these lower highs within these overall downtrends. So what am I trying to say? The winners are going to be big fucking winners. The losers are going to be well, marginal either way at best. But yeah, in this case, looking at the daily time frame, stablecoin dominance very likely coming down, meaning Bitcoin very likely goes up. The question is, do we see a higher low printed here or a lower low or same low? Because this thing can come down, and I think that's the obvious call here. But until we actually get another turnaround, there's no real call to be made. But hey, it is a downtrend for now, so need to respect the downside on this, which does mean that Bitcoin could potentially have like a major fucking catalyst. Or major, just tailwind. Yes, that's the word. That's the word that I'm looking for. Helping it out to the upside. So moving on from there, again, I still want to accurately represent the other side of things well, still on the bullish side here. Weekly time frame for the HPDR. I do want to acknowledge that Bitcoin is still remaining above the median, although I really do at some point expect a test down around there. And if it happened this week, I mean, that'd be great. As of right now, by the way, it is 101,600, so it's moving up a lot. Even coming back down around there wouldn't necessarily indicate that Bitcoin's actually going to break down below $100,000. It's all about where things close at the end of the day. But remember, it's very, very, very likely to test somewhere, or not somewhere, but at least the median whenever we see this setup with volatility contracting and price is either significantly above or significantly below the median. In this case, it's obviously above. So contraction phase brings it back down to the median right here. Just like in this instance where Bitcoin was well below the median and we saw volatility contraction, this produced the nice bounce from about 80,000 all the way up to the median at the time, which was 87, which is, not a bad move in my opinion. But yeah, again, that would even coming back down to test there and reconnect doesn't mean that Bitcoin is necessarily going to break down. And by the way, the 38.2 level is starting to shift massively to the upside here and showing about 121, 225 as the area of interest, if Bitcoin does break out. So we have multiple things kind of pointed around. Let's just call it 120. It's a lot easier to say that way. A little bit below, a little bit above, probably land somewhere between there. Again, that would be the obvious target on a continuation play. Yes, there's potential for more on top of that as well, but first major target, that would be like the first major target. Anyways, yes. Okay. So we've gone through that. Let's go back here and let's now go down to some of the things that we were speaking about last week because they're still present, although again, not active or validated. And that is the 3-day time frame and the 5-day time frame, printing in these patterns of what are effectively rising channels that typically do break down to the downside. Not always. It just has a higher probability. I think somewhere in like the low 60%. But that is something to be aware of. And seeing that we see the same thing on the 3-day and the 5-day time frame, it does make me a little bit, it does make me look at this as added confluence, thus something to pay attention to, meaning that if Bitcoin were to close below the lower boundary of this price action pivot extension right here, well, that would be a resolution in my book. And if it's a resolution, then, well, we could come up with an implied target. And I've already done it over here, I guess. Again, this would be assuming that it broke down on this particular closure. And if that were to happen, that puts somewhere down around about $95,000, give or take a little bit from that number. So that is in there, and that is what's kind of at stake if Bitcoin does break down. But again, it needs to actually confirm a breakdown. And on the 5-day time frame, it's not even closing for another 3.5 days, and the 3-day time frame is not closing until tomorrow night. So, what happens in between there? A lot of things can happen. Bitcoin's obviously well above it right now, so it's not like a major concern at this moment. And like I said, just because something has a higher probability to break down doesn't mean that it's always going to break down. And if it were to actually break out to the upside, I mean, we could probably put in that same sort of measured move to the upside, and I'm going to guess it points up towards 120. In fact, it does. So I'll save you the save you the pain of doing that one yourself. But yeah, that is coming in from multiple different angles now, multiple different pieces of edge as well. So when I see some sort of confluence like that, that to me is a good sign that, it's something to be paying attention to. Basically 120 to the upside or about 95 to the downside. Pick your fucking horse and stick with it. No, you don't need to stick with it. You can always change your mind. Of course, it's fine to change your mind in trading. It's only lobotomized morons that think that it's not okay to change your mind for whatever reason, because apparently you're supposed to have the exact same fucking opinions as you did when you were 0 days old as you do when you're 40 years old, because that makes sense. That's what logical, smart people do. Don't take any new information. That's bad. That just means you're wrong. You can't admit that. No, you must. you must hold on to those early beliefs as much as possible. Anyways, moving on from there, I did want to again bring up this setup because there is still this one is still present here. This 3 EMA, the red moving average versus the yellow moving average. Whenever we see across the downside, there has been a correction to the green moving average 80% of the time, or almost 80% of the time. If you want to be super exact, it's 77 spots, 78% of the time here, using the quant prime service to back to this one. By the way, this would not be a good strategy, obviously, by the equity curve. But just letting you know that, there is a pretty high probability that Bitcoin will at some point come back down and reach this moving average, which right now is 100,950. So it is rising up, and it will naturally rise up more and more that Bitcoin just doesn't break down. And also, especially if Bitcoin, puts in a rally here, which it looks like it is. So what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that, if Bitcoin holds this range for a while longer, at some point, this thing's going to come all the way up to 102, 103. If you do get a correction down there, then at that point you get that condition filled, plus this condition filled over here on the HPDR. And then, it just holds a range again, I guess. It's very, very possible. Maybe never below 100,000 ever again. It's fucking moon boots, baby. Moon boobs as well. And also the super cycle. And we're going to retire that bloodline, bro. Anyways, so that one's still present. But of course, just because it's there doesn't mean that Bitcoin has come back down to it today. So there is that. What else? What else do we have? Yes, I wanted to briefly speak about this. Higher term time frame stochastic momentum, I still think is kind of a little bit weighted towards the downside here, or by a little bit, it is weighted towards the downside here. Daily time frame is going to turn down at the end of today if CME does not finish the day above 107, which right now it's just $100 away from, so it's definitely possible. The 2-day time frame is headed down as long as Bitcoin's below 108,200. The 3-day time frame is also headed down as long as Bitcoin's below 110. The 5-day time frame is going to cross down below 103,700. So the 5-day actually on CME has not crossed down yet. Obviously, spot price action crossed down quite a fair bit ago, back in late May. So it's been many weeks, in fact. And then the weekly time frame on spot is hinting at a cross to the downside this week below 111,500. And then of course CME is actually kind of heading up before that one, 110 as well, crossing to the downside. So, I would say that while Bitcoin probably does have some upside to open up this week, maybe it comes up all the way to test even this declining trend line right here. Let me bring that into the view. There we go. Which is, 110 right now, and probably on spot price action that's going to equate to somewhere around 109. Bitcoin could pop up around there, but again, that doesn't resolve anything. That doesn't change anything. So, just be aware that I really think that we're in one of those boring periods of price action. Obviously, right? I don't think that we're going to see any major moves outside of this range that mean above 110 or below 100 in the next week or 10 days. I think it's going to be mostly a holding pattern. Probably in the short term, you get a short term move to the upside, maybe even all the way up to 109 on spot. But I suspect that it will back off from there and then comes back down to kind of where we're at right now and bores the shit out of everyone, which is typically what happens during summer. That's why we love it so much. Anyways, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video. Hopefully we can start some live streams soon. In fact, I'm feeling that we can do some live streams soon. I think my condition is rapidly improving now. Just need to get my fucking sleep back on track after a week of terrible sleep. I'm massively deprived at this point. So once I get that on track, we'll get back on with the live streams. But until then, it'll just be these nice short uploaded videos. And with that said, I'd like to wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Tuesday.